Hi, everybody. It's Elektra Yao, artist visa lawyer. I'm sorry I'm not looking at my screen right now. I'm trying to set up um, TikTok. All right. So, as I said yesterday, I want to kind of stop talking specifically about approvals. I think that while they do provide insight into another person's experience, sometimes it can be more interesting to hear more technical information. So, I want to talk today about also a successful case where sometimes a lot of the times we don't talk about consular processing. We don't talk about what happens after USCIS approves the petition and you have to go back home and undergo visa stamping to ensure that you can get the visa in your passport. So what happens once you are approved? So basically, once you are approved, USCIS is going to, if you filed a premium processing petition, USCIS is going to send a digital approval notice. In our firm, once we receive the digital approval notice, we send it to you along with an O1 approval step-by-step guide. And I also send a personalized congratulations video to my clients. So what if you file premium processing, you'll get the approval notice digitally via email. You'll also receive approval notice, which is necessary for the interview. So I'm going to talk about a client who was approved through us and underwent consular processing, so the issuing of the visa stamp within her passport by herself. So she didn't necessarily hire the firm. She went through herself. I think she did it herself. I'm not really sure what happened. So basically, this client underwent consular processing, and basically there was a hiccup. There was a bump in the road. She didn't initially get approved. There were issues with the officer um, issuing the visa within her passport. So, what does this essentially mean? This essentially means that you don't get the visa. You don't get the visa to be able to come into the US. Now, how did we resolve this for the client? Because client immediately panicked. Client needs the visa to be able to enter into the US because even if you were approved by USCIS, you could ultimately get denied or placed in administrative processing by the consulate, i.e., the Department of State. So, what we were able to do is kind of like my technique is to always focus on what they're interested in, what they need clarity on, and then to educate them on the law that they should be reviewing, through which the lens they should be reviewing. So basically, I always try to satisfy their desires of giving them what they want, also including the law so that they have more um, context and insight on how to properly analyze the evidence, how they should be legally looking at the evidence. So basically, what we were able to do, very fortunately, is in a very, very short amount of time. I think that she got the denial on a Wednesday. I was able to produce the legal brief for her the following day for her to send off to the consulate. So this legal brief basically includes another discussion of the evidence of why she is extraordinary. And by the way, the consulate is not there to adjudicate whether she is extraordinary. The consulate is there it's really like a technical function. They're just there to issue the stamp within the visa. Obviously, it's a vetting process. They're there to ask you questions. They're there to make sure that what is included within the petition is truthful, is accurate, is not fraudulent. I'm sure that you guys have heard in your day to day life the amount of immigration fraud that occurs. And this is the government's way of ensuring that there is no fraud by having you fill out the DS 160. DS stands for Department of State. I think that's cool for you guys to know. And also through the interview, which is fine. It's an interview. They be asking you regular questions. It gets problematic when number one, the questions are invasive, and number two, when there's a misapplication of the law in the case of my client, where she didn't even undergo an interview, they flat out refused. I drafted the brief explaining the evidence, why they should review the evidence in this light, and the fact that she was approved by USAS, in addition to citing and explaining the law, articulating the law so that they would be able to review it. So this is a successful consular processing case. Kind of had a hiccup in the road because initially we did not do it. She did it by herself. But for those of my clients who choose to have me represent them in the consular processing process, what we do is we thoroughly prep you for the interview, meaning we want you to be very comfortable when you're answering questions from the officer. We want you to be confident when you're explaining what your expertise is. A lot of the times, clients and you, if you're preparing your case on your own, if you're working with another attorney, you might not know exactly the legal arguments that are specifically articulated within the petition. And it's important for you to know how you have been characterized because that information is now on the record. Should you go and file an extension, that information is already on the record. So you want to make sure that you are consistent with the facts. I once had a client who was a high fashion model, very you see her on billboards of your favorite British perfume, and client did not want to undergo preparation with me because she was very very busy working. And in the petition, obviously, we had included specific information, and client had not prepped with me. Client had not reviewed the petition. Client was really unaware of a lot of what was going on because she was just very, very, which is sometimes the nature of the industry. Sometimes during Fashion Week, you're super busy. You can't really communicate on a consistent level with your attorney. And she was making a very high salary, and the officer asked her, "So, how much are you going to be earning?" And she basically said that she didn't know. Now, how much are you going to be earning, or how much are you going to potentially be making, is one of the vetting questions that the officer is going to ask you. It's a very basic question. It's included in the agent agreement. It's included in the employment agreement, and it's included in the immigration form. So very basic because you can find that answer in three places. So it's very important to understand. So basically, this client didn't have time to prep with me or review her petition. Her in her petition, she was making $1 million. She was unable to answer the officer. Had to come back. We had to fix it up, and ultimately, she was so someone says, "Hello, I've tried reaching you on almost all your socials for the past 3 months." Well, I'm not sure if that is actually true. Inked by Tim. You can always go on my website and book a consultation. My website has my email address. I don't answer DMs. I don't answer specific messages. So I said that yesterday. I received tons of messages, guys. I don't have time to really check each individual platform. If you want to send me an email, my email is basically my name, Elektra at yaolawgroup.com. If it's a general question, I'm happy to answer it during a live. If it's a specific question about your case, you have to book a consultation or a strategy session for me to kind of discuss what's going on and what are next steps with your case. But feel free to send me an email inked by Tim, and I'm happy to help you with whatever your goals are. So this was something that I wanted to talk about, the consular processing, and I wanted to bring to light two things. So the first thing is the O1 process, and generally almost all visa processes, is a two-step process. So the first step is you get approved by USCIS. You file the petition at one of the service centers in at USCIS. So for O1s, it's California or Vermont. You get the approval. If you decide to remain here in the US, then you don't need to undergo visa stamping. I've had clients in the US 6 years who've never traveled. And if you don't travel, you don't need to undergo visa stamping. You don't need to have a physical visa in your passport, which is basically what allows you to travel in and out of the US. A common misconception is that the visa is what allows you to work. No, you can work with your paper approval notice. For example, those who are in F1 status, those are who are in E2 status, you have EAD cards which allow you to work. So you don't need to undergo this second step of consular processing if you're going to remain here in the US and work to your heart's content. Now, if you are the type of professional where you have to travel for work, and this is very common for creative directors, fashion photographers, you're going to need to undergo visa stamping because there's no other way for you to get back into the US in O1 status and work legally in O1 status. So you're going to have to go get that visa stamp in your passport. Now, this is the second step I wanted to highlight. So it's not necessarily just filing for the O1 visa, it's filing for the O1 visa classification and also undergoing visa stamping at the consulate. Now, a couple of things about undergoing visa stamping is a lot of the times my clients are like, hey, do I have to go back to, I think a client asked me this today, I have to go back to Abu Dhabi. And it's like, no, you don't. You actually don't need to go back to your home country for O1 visa stamping. You can go to any country for which you satisfy the residency requirements. So, for example, the US consulate in Paris, you're not going to satisfy the residency requirements unless you are a French citizen or a French national and or a French resident. So, if you're just from, I don't know, Spain, but you're traveling through Paris and you want to undergo visa stamping, you can't because you're not a resident and you're not a not a French citizen. Um, but that is not true for other consulates. For example, in Frankfurt, you don't need to be a resident of Frankfurt to be able to undergo visa stamping in Frankfurt. So this is all really important when you're deciding the process. I think it's good to have like a big picture idea of what this whole process is like. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing a strategy session with a potential client, and because she wants to have a big picture idea of how to navigate this process. And I think on the basis of that conversation, I'm going to have a live that is going to discuss how to optimize your OPT time. A lot of the times, OPT holders, they're not really utilizing their time to the best of their ability, especially to the best of their ability for the finality of applying successfully for the O1. So I think I might do a video on that. But what I wanted you guys to know is number one, for O1 visa classification, there's two steps. There's a USCIS step, getting that approved. If you're not going to travel, you can stay put and work with your paper approval notice, right? It's just like, a regular paper. And number two, you need to undergo visa stamping if you're going to travel in and out of the US. That's the first part that I wanted you to know about. The second part that I wanted you to know about is there are no guarantees of approval. There are no guarantees of approval at the USCIS level. So no ethical attorney can guarantee you an approval. If they do, run because they're not an ethical attorney. No guarantee of approval. So you can get approved by USCIS, go to the Department of State or go to the consulate, and guess what? Not be approved either. Happened with my client, did it on her own. Issues happened, had to write the brief and fix it for her. She ultimately got this approved to come to the US. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Jenny, for watching. So, like I said, you're going to apply at USCIS, you're going to get approved, great, stay in the US and hang out. You're going to go to travel and you need a visa and your passport, you're going through the Department of State. No guarantee of approval. So because there's no guarantee of approval, you want to ensure the most success possible. You want to make sure, number one, that the DS-160 is filled out truthfully and accurately. And number two, you want to be prepared to answer the questions. The questions are there not to hurt you or harm you. The questions are there for a vetting purpose. They are trying to vet you and understand and ascertain whether or not the petition was fraudulently filed. If it's filed by me, then there's no issue. I would never submit a fraudulent petition. And they're here to issue the visa stamp. Now, of course, some officers go rogue. I mean, unfortunately, it happens. That is why preparation is extremely important. You need to be able to articulate to an officer why you are extraordinary. And that articulation needs to match the legal analysis included within the brief. So again, today I wanted to talk about a different aspect of the O1, kind of like a part two of the O1 process after you are approved. It's all fine and dandy, but then you've got the consular processing aspect of it if you're a professional that travels in and out, or even if you're not a professional that travels in and out. If you want to visit your family for Christmas, you're going to have to end up doing this. It's non-negotiable. So tomorrow I will talk about how to optimize your time. And again, it's not going to be specific to OPT because you can be in your home country watching this. You can be in Abu Dhabi right now watching me. And you will be able to apply the same principles to your career. And these principles that I'm telling you, that I will tell you about tomorrow for the O1, are actually principles that apply to your career. And how do I know this? I know this for two reasons. I know this because I used to work in the entertainment industry. So I know exactly what I'm telling you. If I'm telling you that you need to be networking, it's because I did exactly that. And that is what led me to working at MTV. And number two, I'm the artist visa lawyer. I know the law and I know how these things, these tips that I will articulate tomorrow are going to manifest and influence the decision that will be eventually filed on your behalf. So the great thing is that these are tips that you can use for your career. They are not specific to living in the States. If you're abroad watching this, you can apply this. They're not specific to student visas at all. You can be a um, someone who is not a student in your home country and you can apply this. Obviously, if you're in the US on a different visa type, you can't apply it because you can't violate the terms of your current visa. So you just want to make sure that you're not really doing that. That, if you have the proper visa to articulate some of the things that I'm doing, if not, or if you're unsure, talk to the attorney who filed for your petition or talk to another attorney. But the tips that I'm going to give you tomorrow are evergreen. Evergreen meaning that you can apply them at any time in your life. You can apply them tomorrow or 2 years from now, and they will still be relevant for your career, for your O1 petition, for your EB1A petition, and all different types of career cases that can be potentially filed. I know I talk a lot about O1s. O1s is the most complex type, but I also file P3s, which are also equally complex. I don't necessarily always recommend a P3 because the time frame is a little bit shorter. The amount of work is very similar, but you only get 1 year as opposed to 3 years with the O1. So in terms of being cost effective, you want 3 years, right? I was telling my paralegal today that it's so incredible, like the journey of an international student, for example. I was an international student at one point. I went to law school also in Spain. So after I graduated from US law school, I worked in the States. I went to US law. I went to law school in Spain. So you guys spend all of this money to attend US universities, right? We're talking about, for example, NYU. I mean, we're talking about very, very, very high 5 figures, right? A huge investment in your career, a huge investment in your discipline, right? You want to make sure that you are not shortchanging yourself once it comes to actually filing for your visa, when it comes to actually doing the hard work to get approved for your visa. Because, as I said, you are spending very, very high 5 figures to get your education, sometimes for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You want to make sure that you are doing yourself justice and filing the proper petition and filing the strongest petition so that you get approved and you can continue your career. Because there's nothing more devastating than coming to university here in the States, paying for all this money, doing your OPT, and not really taking the time to search for the proper attorney that is really going to understand you, number one, as an artist, and number two, the exigencies that you have to file the O1 petition. So think about that. Always think about, and I told I told my paralegal, one of my paralegals, that this is how I look at it. I mean, you take what you are paying like an attorney. Let's say I'm just making this up. Let's say you're paying an attorney like 1,000, right? Divide that 1,000 for the 3 years that you're going to be working here in the US and see how much of return on your investment in terms of filing for your visa you get. So I'm going to assume most people, if you divide 1,000 by 3, I'm not a mathematician. That's why I became a lawyer. It's like what, 333 every year? You're definitely making more than 333 every year if you're working in the state. So make sure you're not shortchanging yourself and you're doing the best that you can to be able to apply for the O1 or the P3 or the EB1A, whatever it is that your attorney deems that you qualify for. But in the meantime, I'm going to give you 3 evergreen tips tomorrow. So stay tuned to my live tomorrow where I'm going to give you these 3 evergreen tips that are going to help you with your OPT, with your creative and artistic career, and with your O1/EB1A petition. So hopefully the consular processing discussion today gave you a little bit more insight on what that process is like. If it didn't, then I understand. It's really hard to articulate in like 5-10 minutes that we've been talking. But at least you have a little bit of background, right? It's a vetting process. That you have to answer questions. That you have to really have a strong understanding of the legal brief that was submitted. At least you have that baseline information to be able to move forward with a little bit more insight. Um, so thank you. I know it's late, and I'm still in the office working on some documents that I need to finalize for some new clients who are beginning with us tomorrow. Um, so I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope that this was helpful. Stay tuned for my 3 evergreen tips on how to maximize your career for the O1 or EB1A tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Have a good night.